And hello, everybody, and welcome to the Movie Pit Podcast. I'm your host, Christian. Thank you very much for joining me on the podcast this week. It's another week of big movie news items that have come out, and we're gonna run them down. I was going somewhere else, but it didn't happen. Just nope. Brain fart. So welcome to the podcast, ladies and gentlemen. If you've never listened to the podcast before, or if you're a returning listener, you probably already know this, but here on the Movie Pit Podcast, we talk about all the latest breaking movie news that has come out throughout the week. I wrap them up all for you guys here on the podcast. We will also, now I'm talking too fast, we will also talk about the movies that are coming out this weekend and some of the big trailers that dropped this week. So we'll definitely talk about those. There's one in particular, but yeah, that's usually what we talk about. So let's get right to it. Let's not waste any more time. I usually start the podcast talking about movie news, the big movie news items, the big noteworthy news items that came out after the podcast went up last week. I did have a lot of technical difficulties last week. I ended up I had a lot of mic issues, and I had a lot of editing issues and publishing issues. So I feel usually that would mean there would be a lot of news items that dropped. However, there was really no big noteworthy news items that dropped last week that at least caught my attention that I want to give to you guys. So that being said, we'll just move on to this week's movie news items. And I do apologize, by the way, before that. I do apologize for that. I've been trying to get the podcast out earlier than usual. The usual time, it feels like, is always around like 5 or after that. But for some reason, that's just how it turns out. But I've been trying to get the podcast out earlier. I feel like maybe if I release it earlier, there'll be a lot more people that listen or something to that extent, but yeah, I've been trying to get the podcast out early. That is one of my goals that I've been trying for a while, and sometimes I succeed, sometimes I don't. It just all really comes down to editing and processing and getting it published. So if it comes out late, I'm sorry. My intention is always to release it as early as possible, but things pop up and things happen, and technology sometimes just is not on your side. So let's move on to this week's movie news items. Enough of my self-deprecating there. Let's move on to trailer talk. We always talk about the trailers first on the podcast. So we're going to talk about some trailers that dropped this week. The first trailer we're going to talk about is actually a teaser trailer to the Margot Robbie-led film I, Tonya.
America. They want someone to love. But they want someone to hate. And the haters always say, Tonya, tell the truth. There's no such thing as truth. I mean, it's bullshit.
Directed by Craig Gillespie, who has directed films like Lars and the Real Girl. He directed the Fright Night remake, which is actually pretty good. He also directed $1 Million Arm with John Hamm, and most recently he directed The Finest Hours that came out, I believe, last year. But this movie is a dark comedy, and it's a biopic on, of course, notorious former ice skater champion. She was a champion also, Tonya Harding. The film chronicles Harding from her rough upbringing to Olympic infamy. More specifically, of course, the well-known incident between her and Nancy Kerrigan. Now, the film premiered at the Toronto International Film Festival and ended up getting a lot of positive buzz when it premiered, especially praising Margot Robbie, some people saying it's the best performance of her career, and Allison Janney, who plays Harding's abusive mother in the film. The teaser is just that. It's just a little bit of a teaser. It's narrated by Robbie's character, and she's talking about how Americans or America always looks for a hero or something, and a villain and stuff like that. And the truth, it's a very interesting teaser. There's a lot of little quick tidbits there. We do get a little brief shot of the apparent attack on Kerrigan. We don't necessarily see the attack, but we do see a little tease of it. And apparently, the movie is framed as present day interviews with everyone involved in the incident recounting their own version of what happened. So I get maybe that's where the narration comes from Margot Robbie's character. And this movie looks pretty good. I mean, from the teaser and just from the early word of what was going on, it seemed like this was going to be a movie that was going to be on a lot of must-watch lists. The movie also co-stars Sebastian Stan, aka Winter Soldier, for those of you guys who don't know who he is from the Marvel films. He actually plays Harding's husband in the film, Margot Robbie's husband in the film. Juliana Nicholson will play Tonya Harding's coach in the film, and Caitlin Carver, who I believe is a newcomer to Hollywood. She's only been in a few projects. She's playing Nancy Kerrigan in the movie. So I, Tonya will be released on December 8th. I believe it's getting a limited release, and then it's getting an expanded release as the weeks go on. So be on the lookout for that. It looks pretty good. I like the teaser. It kind of went somewhere where I wasn't expecting, and I didn't know that the film was being framed as present day interviews with obviously flashbacks being told. So that's kind of interesting to see. Maybe we'll get different viewpoints of the attack on Nancy Kerrigan, which is very interesting. So there you go. That's the teaser for I, Tonya. Let's move on to the first trailer for the Chris Hemsworth-led true war story called 12 Strong.
You taking me to school again?
Uh-huh, and picking you up.
Daddy.
2 planes have crashed into the World Trade Center, and an apparent terrorist attack.
What is that, a part of some drill? Ain't no drill.
19 men attacked our country. The 12 of you will be the first ones to fight back.
How do you love your family and leave them to go to war?
I have 2 hours. I'll be really quick.
Not a chance. Holding out is the only way I can guarantee you come back to me.
War's gonna be over in like a week.
I don't care how long you're gone, as long as you come back.
Every step we take is gonna be on a minefield from 100 different wars. Odds are we're not all gonna make it out of this one.
If we don't take that city, World Trade Center's just the beginning.
We're teaming up with the general of the Northern Alliance that we know nothing about. General, you show me exactly where we're going.
Over the mountains. We take horses.
Hey, who's ridden before? Anyone?
Summer camp when I was 9.
Spring break, but I was pretty hammered. Does it have a name? The name!
Great, this will be fun. We're outnumbered. 50,000 Taliban and Al-Qaeda fighters. We're on our own. I can't order anyone to do this.
Do you want to surrender?
Keep your finger on the trigger.
Just stay there.
Oh, God.
Well, I won't back down.
There's no playbook here. We're gonna have to write it ourselves.
No, I won't back down.
I ain't losing one man on this team.
You could stand me up at the gates of hell, but I won't back down.
We're fighting with horsemen against tanks.
The greatest weapon in history is this. There ain't no easy way out.
If you die, that's a letter you and your wife are gonna wish you wrote.
I made her a promise. I'm coming home.
So the film is in the trailer it says it gives the whole title, but it looks like the running title will be 12 Strong. The movie is called 12 Strong: The Declassified True Story of the Horse Soldiers. It's actually based off a book called Horse Soldiers by Doug Stanton, and the film recounts how in the wake of the 9/11 attacks, a group of CIA paramilitary officers and U.S. Special Forces are sent to Afghanistan to join General Abdul Rashid Dostum, I think I'm pronouncing that right, in the fight against the Taliban. And obviously from the title you can assume the book. Anyway, the book title, Horse Soldiers, it's very interesting because the trailer, it looks like you're about to just have this, basic kind of just soldier versus soldier kind of ideal, but there's multiple shots on these soldiers that we follow that are, I assume, are being led by Chris Hemsworth, who are on horses and they're shooting at tanks, and there's even a line in the trailer that says, you know, it's us on soldiers on horseback with our guns against tanks. So it's the visual on that, the juxtaposition on that is very, very cool. And the movie is being produced by Jerry Bruckheimer. It does have, you know, it says by the producers of Black Hawk Down. Jerry Bruckheimer was a producer on Black Hawk Down. It does have a very light Black Hawk Down feel just off the trailer alone. So it's kind of cool, and I didn't know about this story, but apparently it's a true story about these soldiers who also just kind of get boggled down in this attack. So it's very interesting. It has a very great cast. Like I mentioned, Chris Hemsworth is leading it. Michael Shannon is also in the movie. Michael Pena, Trevante Rhodes, who broke into the scene on Moonlight. He played the grown-up version of the main character. You have Rob Riggle in there, who I think a lot of people were always surprised when they found out that he was actually in the military. But Rob Riggle's in there. I don't know how long he's going to be in the movie, but he does pop up in the trailer. And William Fincher is also in the film as well. He's a great actor. If you don't know who that is, you should. He played the banker in The Dark Knight. I don't know why all my references are from comic book movies, but I'm assuming since a lot of people have seen comic book movies, that's how you'll recognize him. So yeah, it looks pretty good. It does. It looks like a great film. Visually, it looks amazing. And again, the juxtaposition between the soldiers on horses fighting against tanks is pretty good, and the cast is great as well. So, 12 Strong will open next year on January 19th. So you can mark down your calendar if you want to go watch that. And finally, the big trailer of the week. Probably arguably the biggest news item of the week. But of course, it's the trailer, so we're going to talk about it here on Trailer Talk. It is the new trailer to Marvel's Black Panther.
I have seen gods fly. I've seen men build weapons that I couldn't even imagine. I've seen aliens drop from the sky.
Yeah.
But I have never seen anything like this. How much more are you hiding?
Hold up. Let's go.
We are home. My son, it is your time.
Show me my respect and bow down.
You get to decide what kind of king you are going to be. Don't freeze.
I never freeze.
The revolution will not be televised. Show me my respect and bow down. We own ya. We own ya. We only getting started now. Cause we own ya. Everybody think they know me now. Cause we own ya. You and I'm a homie now. Cause we own ya.
I waited my entire life for this. The world's gonna start over. I'ma burn it all.
What happens now determines what happens to the rest of the world.
Damn, that was good. Oh man, if you have not seen the trailer to Black Panther, first of all, you should go watch it. And you should watch it like 5 times, 10 times. Because that's how many times I've watched it. I watched it 5 times. And I'm not gonna lie, it's an awesome trailer. And I think it came as a surprise to everyone, because I don't remember reading anything that they were gonna drop a trailer. And all of a sudden, I checked my timeline on Monday, and it's like, boop, nope, trailer right there for Black Panther. So that was very surprising. But yeah, this trailer looks absolutely insane in every good way possible. The action looks great. The multiple suits in the movie look pretty great. You get to see the Civil War suit. It looks like he has another suit there. They have the 2 suits together, and then at the very end, he has that one suit with the purple coming into the suit. And then of course there's the golden jaguar suit that Michael B. Jordan's character has. That's just that awesome shot of him, just of of the suit kind of coming together and just ripping apart his clothing. That was a really cool shot. That was really cool. I'll admit I lost my shit a little bit when I saw that for the first time. But yeah, I mean it looks great. I mean, we get a bunch of new footage. We get to see just a lot of cool shots. I mean, just visually it's an awesome trailer. It really is. You get to see T'Challa, of course, played by Chadwick Boseman, who was the Black Panther. It looks like, from what I've been reading, because I'm not well versed in all the Black Panther lore and comics, it looks like he's going through the trials. And if you're a Black Panther fan, maybe you know what that means. If you watch the trailer, there's that scene of like T'Challa walking. There's a tree, and then like the sky is purple. Apparently, that's maybe from what I'm reading from some people, it looks like it's the trials of him being chosen to be the Black Panther, to be the protector of Wakanda. So it looks like they'll touch on that, and if they do, then that's really, really bold that they will go in that direction, especially reading on some of the stuff, since again I'm not well versed in all the Black Panther comic lore as much as I should be, but it looks great. It really does. The visuals are great. You could see the more of the technological side. Wakanda is supposed to be this advanced technological country, and it even looks, there's a spaceship, and then it looks like it just passes like through these bubbles to get to Wakanda, and it's hidden, so it's kind of cool. It reminded me a little bit of not to compare the two, because obviously they're very different, but just in terms of the idea, it looks like it's a little like a Wonder Woman. When you enter Themyscira, there's that little portal, so that's kind of what it looks like. But yeah, the whole suit thing. Obviously that's probably one of the biggest the things that I think everyone's talking about is the suits. It looks like the suits kind of have like maybe this nanotechnology tidbit. I mean, that wouldn't be so out of the realm of possibility. Obviously, Wakanda is again technologically advanced country, but yeah, just that shot of Michael B. Jordan, who's playing one of the villains in the movie, is playing Killmonger, when he has that pose, and we've seen that pose before in the other trailers, but obviously they finished the effects of that. It looks so good. Go watch it. I can't, just go watch it. Just go watch it. Movie comes out February 16th next year. So long, but so close. So there you go. All right, let us move on. That was all the trailers for this week, guys. Let's move on to the movie news. So the first movie news item is, this one kind of started off the week also right there with the Black Panther trailer. The young Han Solo movie finally has a title because it is finished filming. So after the lengthy and much talked about production on the young Han Solo movie, new director, because he is the new director of the movie, Ron Howard, has not only revealed that filming is now complete, but he also revealed the official title of the movie. He did this via Twitter, saying, hey, production's ended, and here is the title for the movie. The movie will not very surprisingly be called Solo, a Star Wars story. So, a Star Wars story seems to be the little subtitle for all their spin-offs. Obviously, like Rogue One was called Rogue One, a Star Wars story. So that's going to be a continuing theme for that. So the movie is called Solo. If you remember, taking you back just a little bit of how we got to this point, the film was originally going to be directed by Phil Lord and Chris Miller. They were set to direct, and they started filming in January. And while they finished the bulk of the filming, apparently there was only a few weeks left, there were a few weeks left per the reports. Including reshoots that they had accounted for in their filming afterwards. They left production over what was originally called creative differences. However, multiple reports came out saying that wasn't the case. According to those reports, Phil Lord and Chris Miller's style of going off script and improvising on set rubbed the writer Lawrence Kasdan, who has been involved with the Star Wars franchise saga, whatever word you want to use more, rubbed them the wrong way. And it also rubbed pretty much their boss, Lucasfilm head Kathleen Kennedy, the wrong way as well. But apparently they waited until only a few weeks were left in production to actually do something and get them kicked out. So Ron Howard then came in, and he had to quickly finish up the film. Not only quickly finish up whatever was left of filming, but also do all these reshoots to add his own style and do whatever he had to do, because he had to film as much as he could with Emilia Clarke and Donald Glover, because they had to go back and film Game of Thrones and Atlanta, because those shows took priority over their movie careers. And so now we have a release date set. The release date was never going to be in question. Lucasfilm was dead set on getting this movie released on Memorial Day weekend next year, and they weren't going to let anything stop them. So Solo is now finished. It is now ready. The movie will come out next year on May 25th, more specifically. It will star Alden Ehrenreich as the young Han Solo, Emilia Clarke and Donald Glover, like I just mentioned, Woody Harrelson, Thady Newton from Westworld, and amongst many others as well. So, yeah, there you go. We finally have a title. I can stop calling it Young Han Solo movie and start just calling it Solo. So, there you go. All right, let's move on to these next two news items. Are pretty quick. They're just little updates here on some films. Morgan Freeman is set to play Colin Powell in a biopic. Reginald Hudlin, who has his Thurgood Marshall biopic called Marshall out in theaters right now. If you haven't watched that, I recommend it. It's pretty good. He's set to direct another biopic, and of course it is about the former U.S. Secretary of State, Colin Powell. The film is currently called Powell and will have Morgan Freeman play the former Secretary of State. The biopic is set during Powell's tenure as Secretary of State in the George W. Bush White House, more specifically the lead up to the UN presentation he made about going into Iraq to search for WMDs. So that's a pretty interesting project there. Reid Scott is in talks for Venom, the HBO series Veep star. Reid Scott, who plays Danny Egan on the show, if you're a fan of Veep. If you don't watch Veep, I highly recommend it. It's very, very funny. Is in talks to join the Spider-Man spin-off that is not connected to the Marvel Cinematic Universe, Venom. The role he's up for is being kept secret at the moment, but if he joins, he'll join the already impressive cast of Tom Hardy, who of course will play Eddie Brock, aka Venom, Michelle Williams, Riz Ahmed, and the just recently also added Jenny Slate. Ruben Fleischer is going to direct the movie. He directed Zombieland and the slightly very underwhelming Gangster Squad that came out a few years ago. The filming is aiming to start as soon as, I believe, maybe even later this month, because they do have a release date of October 5th, 2018, so they had to start filming right away, and the plan was always to start filming around this time, actually, so we'll probably be hearing a little bit more about Venom as well as the weeks go on. But yeah, there's no real word on what the film will be about, other than it will, of course, follow Eddie Brock as he becomes Venom, and Carnage will be playing the villain in the movie, or will be the villain in the movie. He won't be playing himself because Carnage doesn't exist in the real world. But yeah, so there you go. So let's move on to the next tidbit here. Chiwetel Ejiofor is set to make his directorial debut. The Oscar-nominated actor is set to step behind the camera as a director. Ejiofor has begun production on his yet-to-be untitled directorial debut, which he will also star in. The movie is an adaptation of William Kamawamba in his autobiography. It's an adaptation of his autobiography called The Boy Who Harnessed the Wind. The story tells the life-changing story of how the author helped save his village as a 13-year-old by constructing a wind turbine from bits of scrap metal, old bicycle parts, and wood. So it's a very inspirational, true story about this young man. The film will follow him at a young age. And Chiwetel Ejiofor is going to be playing his father in the film, so they're going to be building the windmill for that. The film has already started, like I mentioned. I think I mentioned this. The film has already started filming. They begun production already. There's no word yet on when the film will be released, but this is pretty cool. Chiwetel Ejiofor has obviously been around for a while. If you don't know who he is, he was in 12 Years a Slave. He played the main character in that. He's also been in a bunch of other movies like The Martian. He was the assassin in Firefly. Again, going back to my nerdy references. What else was he in? Oh my God, he's been in a lot of stuff that I wrote. He was in the Kinky Boots adaptation, which I never saw, but I know he was in. He's just been in a lot of stuff. So he's a very good actor, very very good actor. And again, if you haven't seen 12 Years a Slave, that's probably one of his best performances that I can think of. He's finally stepping behind the camera, and that's really cool. Can't wait to see him. Can't wait to see what he does. A lot of actors are stepping behind the camera nowadays, so this is pretty cool. All right, so let's move on to the next movie news item, which is actually a little update from a trailer that came out last week. The New Mutants. The New Mutants apparently came onto the news last week. Last week. I'm a time traveler now, apparently. Last week when the trailer dropped, I was a very big fan of the trailer. If you haven't seen the trailer, I highly recommend you go watch it. It's a very good trailer. It's very different from any other X-Men property out there. But the New Mutants apparently will be a trilogy, hopefully, if the first film does very well. Will be a trilogy of horror movies. So how about that? So this comes from the director himself, Josh Boone, who was speaking with IGN. And Boone said that his pitch was a trilogy of horror films, saying, quote, "We bought it to Fox as a trilogy of films, really all based on that long run by Bill Steinkowitz." Pretty sure I pronounced that wrong. I'm pretty sure I pronounced that wrong. And the kind of, I'm just gonna keep going, powering through. And it kind of incorporated some stuff from later issues in the 80s. These are all going to be horror movies, and they're all going to be their own distinct kind of horror movies. This is certainly the rubber reality, put that in quotes, supernatural horror movie. The next one will be a completely different kind of horror movie. Our take was just to go examine the horror genre through comic book movies and make each its own distinct sort, drawing from the big events that we love in the comics. And as for his inspirations, he said this, saying our whole pitch was on the series based on Bill Steinowitz, that name I can't say it, run with Chris Claremont. More specifically, the issues New Mutants Volume 1, 18 through 31, and 35 to 38, which is the Demon Bear storyline, for those of you guys who don't know. I lost my quote already. There it is. So it's very much when the New Mutants become dark and surreal and more horror-driven. We are incredibly inspired by the Demon Bear, there you go, story, which is probably the best well-known New Mutants story. We also drew on movies like One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, Stephen King stuff, and even Nightmare on Elm Street 3, Dream Warriors. He finally mentioned the movies will take place in present day and has plans to include characters like Karma and Warlock in future New Mutant movies. So this means that the New Mutants are basically in the same timeline as Deadpool and the Deadpool sequel. So I don't know if there will be future crossovers, but this is pretty cool. I know a little bit of the New Mutants stories from the comics. I knew about the Demon Bear story before because, like I mentioned, I knew a little bit about the New Mutants before they were making a movie. So I thought this was pretty cool. I know, like I mentioned last week when the trailer dropped, I know there was a lot of people who were divided on whether or not the New Mutants should be a horror based story. Obviously, I was very surprised by it. I mentioned it last week on the podcast again, talking about the trailer. I was very surprised by how they were taking the trailers and everything by making this kind of essentially really a full blown horror film, and it wasn't even like, oh, like we're gonna tease a little bit of horror there. We're just gonna have a few like horror moments. No, they went full blown horror for this, and I was very surprised by that. I wasn't taken aback, and I wasn't like I'm not excited anymore. No, I'm really excited for this, and I applaud Fox for going a different route, because we've seen the team up movies, we've seen the team up superhero movies, and I applaud Fox for coming out and saying, you know what? No, we're going to do something different. We're going to do this team of characters that no one really knows, and we're going to make them we're going to put them in a horror movie, and we're going to make them all we're going to make them the ages they are in the comics. We're going to make them all teenagers. We're going to put them in this essentially kind of an asylum place and just rank up all the horror and just scare the shit out of everyone who goes to watch this movie, because that's what it looks like. So I'm really excited for it. Will it work? Hopefully. I'm game for it, so hopefully other people are as well. The New Mutants will open next year on, coincidentally, April 13th, Friday the 13th. So, there you go. Alright, so let's move on to the next movie news item. New adaptation of Lone Wolf and Cub gets a writer. Paramount Pictures are moving forward with their new adaptation of the manga Lone Wolf and Cub, as they have hired writer Andrew Kevin Walker to script to write the script. Lone Wolf and Cub doesn't have a director yet. However, Justin Lin, who has directed multiple Fast and the Furious films, he directed Tokyo Drift all the way up to Fast and the Furious 6, and he also directed Star Trek Beyond last year, has been attached to produce the film. Has been attached to produce the film since 2012. That's how long he's been attached to this project. And the word is that he would potentially be step in as a director if everything works out. He's been attached since 2012, and the fact that they haven't done this yet is kind of interesting, but whatever. For those of you who are unfamiliar with the property, the manga has been around since actually the 70s. If that's hard to believe. Yeah, so it's an epic revenge story that ranged up to apparently 9,000 pages. So it's a very long-running manga. It's been acclaimed for its storytelling and its historical accuracy, and has influenced Japanese pop culture, spawning a bunch of movies, a TV series, and even plays. However, it didn't reach the States until the 80s. When everything, the manga and the story and everything didn't reach here, and really, like as any other manga or story like that, not until the 80s. That's mind-boggling to me, really. The story itself, for those of you guys that don't know, including myself, I didn't know. I have heard about the property before. I kind of knew a little bit, but until I kind of wrote up the story, I didn't know really what the extent was. So the story itself is told of a shogun's executioner named Ido Origami, who starts a path of, and if I mispronounce the name, I'm sorry, but who starts a path of revenge after his wife and the rest of his house is murdered, leaving only his infant son alive. Ido is joined on his quest by his son Dagoro, who, as he grows up, is trained to be a fearsome warrior, and joins him as a father-son team of assassins for hire as they travel the country and seek revenge against the clan that killed their family. So that's what the whole property is about. Paramount Pictures has apparently been working on this project since 2003. So this is a very long in the works movie that they still haven't got off the ground. At one point, they even had Darren Aronofsky attached to direct, but that didn't work out. So obviously, since they've been working on it since 2003, and they got Justin Lin attached as a producer in 2012. But anyway, as for Walker, the writer, he broke into the scene in 1995 with a little film. I don't know if you've heard about it. It's called Seven, and it's directed by this little indie director called David Fincher. Have you heard of him? I don't know if you have. I don't know if you heard of that movie. So that's what he broke onto the scene with. He went on to write a bunch of other big films. The Nicolas Cage film 8mm, the Tim Burton directed Sleepy Hollow, the 2010 remake of The Wolfman, and his most recent project was an animated comedy in last year called Nerdland, with Paul Rudd and Patton Oswalt lending their voices to that. That Nerdland was apparently based on his early days in Hollywood, trying to make it as a screenwriter. So that's kind of cool. I kind of actually want to check that out now. As I mentioned, I knew about the property in Lone Wolf and Cub. I knew about it a little bit here and there. I've seen little clips here and there, and seen like panels and stuff on the internet, but I've never actually like sat down and read this whole story or seen the multiple movies that this thing has, and the multiple sequels that this thing has as well. But I know there's a huge fan following out there, and given how long the studio has been working on this, who they have attached as a producer in Justin Lin, and hopefully he'll come in as a director, and now they have this writer who is very capable of handling himself in big projects in Walker. I think it's a step in the right direction, and now they have a script being lined up to be worked on. Hopefully we'll be hearing a little bit more about Lone Wolf and Cub, and hopefully it doesn't take 10 years to do a project, or to finally get it off the ground and do the project. So yeah. Alright, so let's move on to our last movie news item of the week. And this is a movie news item that has been... This is a movie news item that I'm talking about, but it also has connections to a bunch of other movie news items that I have not talked about. And it does deal with Harvey Weinstein. I talked about Harvey Weinstein last week on the podcast, so I'm not going to get into my views on that. I'll give you the basic rundown of what I said. He's a scumbag. Just put it that way. But that's what I said on the podcast, and I repeated that. So this movie news item, Channing Tatum. It involves Channing Tatum. And Channing Tatum has halted development on his directorial debut because of the Weinstein revelation. So again, the Harvey Weinstein name is obviously one of the biggest names in Hollywood right now for the wrong reasons. And it's become this thing where it's just affecting everything that the Weinstein Company is touching. They recently moved one of their potentially big movies that they wanted to probably add into the Oscar race in the current war with Benedict Cumberbatch and Michael Shannon, and that was a movie about Thomas Edison and George Westinghouse's public battle about how to handle electricity. So they moved that. That was supposed to come out next month. And they moved that from next month to next year. Although they haven't actually given it from what I believe and from what I read, I didn't double check this before I started recording, probably should have, but I don't think they've given it an exact release date just yet. They just moved it to sometime next year. So the current war just got moved. I know Harvey Weinstein has been removed as a producer on a few films that he had his name on. And it looks like people are distancing themselves, not just from Harvey Weinstein, but from the Weinstein Company in general. And one of the most recent projects of that is an adaptation of Matthew Quick's novel, Forgive Me, Leonard Peacock. And the movie was set to be the directorial debut of Channing Tatum and his producing partner, Reid Carolyn, I should say. And it's probably for the best, especially considering the subject matter. So I'm just going to give you the little blurb of what the movie's about. It's a young adult novel that centers on a troubled teenager who plans to kill his best friend and then himself. He first visits 4 people closest to him, giving them each of them a present. And as the day goes on, secrets of his past are revealed, including the experiences of sexual abuse. Obviously, as you can see, the Weinstein Company probably does not want to deal with anything close to that. So, Tatum did release a statement through his Instagram account. Part of it read like this, saying, quote, While we no longer develop it or anything else that is a property of TWC, the Weinstein Company, we are reminded of its powerful message of healing in the wake of tragedy. This is a giant opportunity for real positive change that we proudly commit ourselves to. The truth is out, so let's finish what our incredible colleagues started and eliminate abuse from our creative culture once and for all. That was the end of this quote. That was part of his quote. I didn't read his whole quote. But again, this is one of the films that is changing everything from development to rights. Lin-Manuel Miranda, he wants the rights back to his musical, his Tony-winning musical, In the Heights, which was the first big musical he did before he did Hamilton. He sold the rights to the Weinstein Company because they were going to make a movie based off it, and now Lin-Manuel Miranda wants the rights back to sell it to another studio. And there's been a bunch of projects. I think there was a project that involved who was it? It was a director that has worked with David. I think it was David O. Russell. David O. Russell was developing a movie at the Weinstein Company, and I don't know. It might have been a movie or one of a straight VOD release, but he was working on something over there. I believe it was David O. Russell, and he kind of dropped out of that project. So it's it's just going to be a running theme that we're going to be experiencing, and that people are going to be experiencing for a long time. For a long time, I should say. That's what I'm trying to say. For a long time. Filmmakers, actors, writers, probably producers. The Weinstein Company is just the Weinstein Company alone, just because of the name Weinstein, is going to be impacted a lot. And this is only one of the few projects. This is probably only one of the few projects publicly that is being outed and being like, hey, we're not doing that anymore. We're not working with you guys anymore. I'm pretty sure internally and behind the scenes and not reported on, there are things that are going to be discussed. So yeah, that's just, it's, on one hand it's kind of a shame, because obviously, now Channing Tatum has to wait to make his directorial debut, and I was never a champion of Channing Tatum. I was very against him for a while, and then he started surprising me with a lot of his big roles. But yeah, and the book, I've never heard of this book before, and obviously the subject matter is probably something that the Weinstein Company probably wants to not touch for a while. So we'll see how this works out in the end. Alright, so that is all the movie news items of the week. Thank you guys so much for tuning into that. But yeah, if you want to catch up on a few things, you can. There is a link down below that I do want to point out. It is a podcast. It is the Empire podcast, Empire Magazine podcast with David Fincher. David Fincher did I think it's 40 plus minutes. I didn't look at the runtime, but it's like 40 plus minutes. And he talks about a great deal of projects. I think he was there to promote Mindhunters on Netflix. But he talks about a bunch of stuff. He talks about World War Z 2. He talks about that. He talks about his now canceled project at HBO. He talks about why there's a lot of pressure to direct a Star Wars movie, why he doesn't want to direct a Marvel movie. So he talks about a array of things on that podcast. I have not listened to it. I've only seen little snippets here and there online, but that is something I am going to listen to immediately. I just wanted to pass that along to you guys. Just reading the quotes, it sounds like a very interesting listen to, so there is that. But also right down there, of course, all the links to the trailers are down there. There are links to all my other stuff, all my social media stuff, my Twitter, my Instagram, my WordPress account, where I do spoiler-free written reviews. Also down there is the Twitter account for the podcast. I mentioned last week that I actually think I mentioned it 2 weeks ago that I made it, but I haven't updated it. And last week I said I was going to update it, and I still haven't updated it. I will be updating it. I promise. I will be getting to it. There's just all these other things that are happening right now in my life that I can't update my damn Twitter page that I made for the podcast. So there is that. Also, while you're down there, there is a Facebook page for the podcast that I do updates, ironically. But yeah, Facebook page is up there. Go give me a like. Go give me a follow. Go give me all the good stuff. You know what I'm asking for. But yeah, go do that. If you like the Facebook page, you get an early preview of what we're going to talk about on the podcast. And yeah, I want to hear your guys' opinions. I'll put your opinions on the podcast here as well. Get you guys involved more in the podcast. I think that's all the plugs. Yes, that's all the plugs that I have for you guys. So let's move on to this week's releases.
Let's all go to the lobby. Let's all go to the lobby. Let's all go to the lobby to get ourselves a treat.
So this week's releases, we have a few limited releases for you guys. The first one is Wonderstruck. It is based off a book. The story of a young boy in the Midwest is told simultaneously with a tale about a young girl in New York from 50 years ago as they both seek the mysterious connection. The film stars Millicent Simmonds, I think I say that name, Oaks Fogley, and Julianne Moore. How about that? The next limited release, however, coming out also is The Killing of a Sacred Deer, written and directed by the Lobster director. Not even going to try to pronounce his name because I've already butchered a bunch of names in the podcast already. But it stars Colin Farrell as Stephen, a charismatic surgeon who is forced to make an unthinkable sacrifice after his life starts to fall apart when the behavior of a teenage boy, played by Barry Cohen from Dunkirk, plays one of the kids on the boat with Mark Rylance' character, has been taken under his wing, turns sinister. mystery there. The film also stars Raffi Cassidy, Bill Camp, and Nicole Kidman. I've seen the trailer a few times now for this, and I have to say it looks pretty good. I mean, there is definitely a very big mystery kind of thriller aspect going on. It looks a little disturbing, just not disturbing in the sense of, you know, like, oh, there's a bunch of killing going on. Just disturbing in the sense that there's just a lot of like lingering shots based just off the trailer. Just a lot of lingering shots where it's like, I don't feel comfortable watching this. So that very good job on that part. So hopefully that is the case watching the movie. I think that's probably what they want you to feel. So yeah, I wasn't the biggest fan of The Lobster. I think it was a good, like, the first half of the movie was really good, and then the second half just lost a lot of steam and just wasn't as good as the first half. But I am willing to give The Killing of a Sacred Deer a chance. I was considering the cast. So yeah. Alright, so let's move on to this week's wide releases. We do have, just kind of like last week, we have a few wide releases that are considered wide releases. However, their theater count is not as big as a couple of the movies that we'll have here that I'll be benching. So the first few movies that I'm going to be talking about are movies that have not the highest theater count, but they are still considered wide releases. So the first one is a movie called Same Kind of Different as Me. Yes, that is I did not mess that up when I was typing it. That is the title of the movie. An international art dealer, Ron Hall, played by Greg Kinnear in the movie, must befriend a dangerous homeless man, played by Jamun Hansu, in order to save a struggling marriage to his wife, played by Renee Zellweger, a woman whose dream will lead all three of them on the journey of their lives. The film co-stars Olivia Holt and Jon Voight. The film is actually based on a true story and a book by Ron Hall, Denver Moore, who is the homeless man, and Lynn Vincent. So I've seen the trailer just a couple times. I believe this movie was supposed to come out last year, or it probably did come out last year, just like in a few theaters, and now it's just coming out, you know, wide. Now it looks okay. I mean, it doesn't look too bad. I'll just put it out that I'm not going to be rushing out to go watch this movie. Put it that way. So the next wide release we have is something that I've been looking forward toward for a while, The Snowman, based on the novel by Joe Nesbo. For Detective Harry Hole, played by Michael Fassbender, the death of a young woman during the first snowfall of winter feels like anything but a routine homicide. His investigation leads him to the Snowman Killer, an elusive sociopath who continuously taunts Hole with cat and mouse games. As the vicious murders continue, Harry teams up with a brilliant recruit, played by Rebecca Ferguson, to try to lure the madman out of the shadows before he strikes again. The film co-stars Chloe Sevigny, Charlotte Gainsborough, James D'Arcy, Val Kilmer, Toby Jones, and J.K. Simmons. Like I mentioned, I've been looking forward to this for a while. I'm a huge fan of Michael Fassbender. The movie is directed by Thomas Alfredson, who directed Tinker Tailor Soldier Spy. He directed the original Let the Right One In. It was remade here in America called Let Me In with Chloe Grace Moretz. I'm just a huge fan of his, and I believe I've seen something else that Joe Nesbo wrote that was made into a movie. I could be wrong, but the feeling seems familiar. I just can't put my finger on it. But it looks really good. It's Michael Fassbender, Rebecca Ferguson. You can't go wrong with that. And it just looks like one of those movies that's going to be really uncomfortable to watch. It's just gonna be filled with great performances. It just looks dreary. It looks just dreary and haunting, and just, I don't know. You know, it's just one of those movies where it's like you can't really put your finger on it and why you want to go watch it and why you like it, but hopefully that's the case. So The Snowman is that movie. The next wide release that again doesn't have a huge theater count is Tyler Perry's Boo 2: A Madea Halloween. Written, directed, and starring Tyler Perry. Madea, Bam, and Hattie venture to a haunted campground, and the group must run for their lives when monsters, goblins, and the boogeyman are unleashed. I think I maybe was forced to watch one once. I've never seen a Madea movie. I haven't. The closest I got was, being forced to watch one by my sisters. So I just, they're not for me. They're not targeted toward me. I'm sure they're good. I'm sure they're funny. They're just not targeted toward me. So, and the trailer, it's just don't think about the trailers. It just doesn't look that good. Again, to me, they're not targeted toward me. So so let's move on to the two big wide releases. I mean, these have all been wide releases, but these are two ones that are getting high theater counts. The first one is Only the Brave, based on the true story of the Granite Mountain Hotshots. A group of elite firefighters risk everything to protect their town from a historic wildfire. The film stars Josh Brolin, Miles Teller, Jennifer Connelly, Taylor Kitsch, James Badge Dale, Andy McDowell, and Jeff Bridges. This is a movie that I have known for a while. It's a movie that I've kind of been looking forward toward. It's a movie that I don't know anything about, the true story. I don't know anything about the true story. It almost got ruined for me. I was like, no, I want to go see what the true. I mean, with these true story movies, you obviously have to take everything at face value, and obviously the movie is a dramatized account of what really happened that day, but or that during that time. So I usually when these true story movies, unless I absolutely know what the story is, I usually just go watch the movie and then afterwards find out what really happened. So I don't want to ruin it for myself, and I want to go watch Only the Brave and experience the story, as it happens. So yeah, there you go, Only the Brave. The next one is Geostorm, when the network of satellites designed to control the global climate start to attack Earth. It's a race against the clock to uncover the real threat before a worldwide geostorm wipes out everything and everyone. The film stars Gerard Butler, Jim Sturgis, Ed Harris, Abby Cornish, Daniel Wu, Zazie Bates, Eugenio Debrez, and Andy Garcia. So it's just a packed cast of names for this one. So Geostorm, we've talked about Geostorm on the podcast before. One, because obviously it's a big movie. It's being directed by Dean Devlin. I think that's his name. I could be. I just off the top of my head, I don't have it written down. But Devlin, I know his last name is Devlin. Devlin has worked with Roland Emmerich on a lot of the big catastrophe apocalyptic movies like Day After Tomorrow and 2012 and stuff like that. So he's always been a producer on those movies. So he's making his directorial debut with this one, which is the reason why it feels like you're watching Day After Tomorrow or 2012 or something like that. But yeah, he's making his directorial debut for that. However, the other reason we talked about on the podcast was because apparently the movie was testing so bad that they had to go back and do a lot of reshoots that essentially kind of changed the story. Apparently they also changed actors for some of the characters as well, so they had to change a lot of stuff. So I don't know how the movie is going to turn out. The worst part about this, about two kind of natural disaster movies, one being the overly extreme in Geostorm and the other being a real life thing that happens all the time and something that is happening at the moment in several locations, Only the Brave, is wildfires. So we have two movies about things that are kind of that are happening in the real world. You have the wildfires in California. You have the wildfires. I believe it was isn't it in Spain? I think it was in Spain. There's wildfires over there as well. I'm sure there's wildfires somewhere else as well, but that just haven't been televised or been reported on the news. But there's wildfires happening in real life. There's still people recovering from the hurricanes like Harvey and Irma and the other hurricane that for whatever reason I can't think of. But I'm losing my voice. Sorry, but there's these people dealing with these actual natural disasters, and Hollywood decides to release the two natural disaster movies on the same day. So yes, you guys suspend some disbelief, and yes, you probably go there to escape your real life. But if you're watching these people suffering through all this carnage of maybe what real people are suffering, or maybe someone who's suffering through that, it's just crazy. It's not. Yeah, I don't know what to say. But yeah, those are your movies coming out this week. Your two movies are going to be in the most theaters: Geostorm, Only the Brave. Your other wide releases are also Tyler Perry's Boo 2, A Medea Halloween, The Snowman, and Same Kind of Different as Me. And your limited releases this week are Wonderstruck and The Killing of a Sacred Deer, or The Killing of the Sacred Deer, I should say. So yeah, there you go. This is usually the time where I make box office picks. However, I will not be making box office picks because if you listen to the podcast last week, I talked about Martin Scorsese and a great essay he did talking about the box office and everyone's obsession with it, and everyone's obsession with sites like Rotten Tomatoes and CinemaScore. So last week I kind of did it as an honor to that. This week I guess I'll continue it. So maybe I'll find something new and different to do for this. This was always just a fun little game. It wasn't something like I was doing that, but I'm also not doing it because I wouldn't know how to predict anything. Yeah, I wouldn't know how to predict it. I mentioned last week that if I did box office space, I think I would want The Foreigner to be number 1. I was wrong, because The Foreigner was not number 1. The Foreigner was number 3 at the box office last week. So yeah, I will find something new to put here in the little box office prediction games. It was always a fun little game, but maybe I'll bring it back next week. I don't know, but either way, I'll find something a little new here to do. But either way, I wouldn't know how to make out this week. I don't know if Geostorm will be the top box office movie. I don't know if Only the Brave will be the box office movie. I don't even know if Tyler Perry's Boo 2 will be the top movie at the box office, because that is a real possibility. So yeah, I wouldn't even know how to do it. So I am taking a pass on the box office predictions game. So that's it. That's all I got for you guys. So thank you guys so much for listening to the podcast this week. I thoroughly enjoyed it, doing it for you guys. Hopefully you guys thoroughly enjoyed listening to it. I will come back next week, obviously, to talk about more movie news, talk about the movies that are coming out in theaters next week, and talk about any other movie trailers that dropped. So thank you guys once again for listening to the podcast. I am your host, Christian. If you would do me so kind a favor to leave me some love. Leave me. If you're listening to this on YouTube, hit that like button. Let me know what you thought down below in the comment section. If you're listening on SoundCloud, was it a heart? I don't know. I actually don't know what it is. Just whatever the equivalent of liking on SoundCloud is. Send me a message. Let me know what you guys thought of it. If you're listening to this on iTunes, please do me a favor and leave me a review and a rating. I would thoroughly appreciate it. It will really help me out in the long run over on iTunes, and it shows me that you guys are listening, and it shows that you guys care about what's going on. So please go leave me a review. I'd really appreciate it, and I would please leave me a review. That's all I can say. So, and if you leave a review and a rating, I will shout you guys out here on the podcast. So, thank you guys so much for listening to the podcast this week. Have a very safe, fun weekend this week. And as always, my little signature here on the podcast: go watch some movies.
Whoop whoop! Yeah! Give it up! Movies!